So within the spirit of placemaking, as Tony Tropy says in Act Ron, okay, in Summit Art Space, we want to spend just a minute setting this space. Whoa, setting this space for this evening's program. So if you would, close your eyes. I know it's a little quirky, but close your eyes. This is the space where Big Love is going to take place this weekend, and we hope you participate. Take a deep breath in. All the energy of all the incredible people and souls in this room. And breathe out all the tension of today. Breathe in all the possibility in this room. Breathe out all the negativity and barriers. Breathe in inspiration. Breathe out the naysayers. Be in the silence of love. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the GAINS March meeting. I'm Sue Lacey. I'm part of the planning team. There are probably 6 to 8 to 10 people in the room who are part of the planning team. But I'd like to ask, who I consider the mother of GAINS, to come up, and Karen Starr of Hazel Tree Interiors, to help us put our minds in the proper space of why GAINS was launched and created and why it's been sustained now for 3 years, right? Almost 4, in May. In May, it'll be 4 years of consecutive monthly gatherings. I think we should give ourselves a hand. Who have really made tonight possible, who are part of the planning team as well. But I'd like to ask Karen to take the stage and share the vision and where we've been and where we're headed.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. As Sue said, we are almost 4 years old as a non-organization. We are a completely volunteer-run and organized group. We're not a 501c3. We don't have a board of directors. We just have some passionate volunteers, about a dozen of us at this point, that make the decisions on programming and do all the communications for this group. So GAINS, if you're not familiar, it stands for the Greater Akron Innovation Network for Sustainability. And we were started almost 4 years ago after the organization in Cleveland that was Entrepreneurs for Sustainability disbanded. And E4S was the acronym for them. They were really influential in many of the GAINS co-creators' lives and businesses. It was a business-to-business organization that focused on sustainable products and practices, and it really rallied Northeast Ohio together around this kind of goal of everyday sustainability. So GAINS is an offshoot of E4S, even though they may not know it, although I think Holly does know that, the founder of E4S at this point. But we hold monthly meetings, always on the second Wednesday of the month, most often at Musica in Akron. One of our co-creators, Tony Tropy, is kind enough to lend us space every month. This month, it just seemed like a natural fit to move it over here to Summit Art Space, another community partner. because of the size of this meeting. You see we have many, many more people here than, not many, but you know, we get like 40 to 100 people depending on the weather and the topic and all of that good stuff. But just because Big Love is going to be here this weekend as well. So here we are in Summit Art Space, and if you didn't already sign up to be notified via email about our upcoming events, there is a sign-in sheet at the front door, and please do sign up with your email address so you can keep you know, aware of the different topics that we're discussing each month and different offshoot opportunities for programming that we're starting to build with our organization. And also, there is going to be a separate email list for the City Repair Akron group that is starting to form, so please check that box if you haven't already, if you'd like to be added to that email list as well. So I'd just like to give you a little history of how GAINS got started, and thank you all for being here tonight. I think that's it. Thank you.
Shout out to Philip Neighbors and the Mustard Seed Market for, as always, preparing a wonderful spread for us. Thanks, Philip. So I have a question for you guys. How many of you have ever seen the space station flying overhead? Raise your hand. I saw it this morning when I was walking the dog around 5:30. Did anybody else see it this morning? Peter, you've seen it, right? What's the coolest thing about seeing the space station for you?
Imagining what it looks like.
Imagining what it looks like. Yeah. What about others who have seen the space station? Yeah, what was the coolest thing? That it's up there. How did it get up there and there are people living there for like months? Right. So, what's that? There's people up there, living up there, right? So, I had only ever seen it one other time, faintly over Lake Erie. But this morning, I looked up and I'm like, wow, that's a big-ass plane. What is that? And I finally figured out, it's the space station. So I had a moment to imagine all these things that people have shared and imagine what was the innovation and the creativity and the non-stopness, and we're going to keep going at this till we create what we're inspired to create. What did it take to create the space station and to keep it up there for all this time and maintain it? So I started my day today on the right foot, considering what we're doing tonight, because placemaking is about looking at the assets we have, and we've got lots of them. They're in this room, they're out the window. This is a great vantage point, at least for downtown. So we're building on our assets to create livable, energizing spaces that promote health, well-being, and happiness. And we've got a lot of good things already underway with Better Blocks and North Hill, and now expanding to other communities and other neighborhoods. And we're thrilled to have some special guests tonight that our young leadership in GAINS has brought to the table. And so let's begin this evening. I want to introduce two of our planning team members, Jessica Myers and Beth Bill. Let's give them a hand. They worked really hard to make tonight happen, and they were able to learn about city repair, which they will share with you briefly, how they even got connected and excited. And so we're going to turn it over to them, and then I'll be back to moderate a question and answer period as well. But welcome, you guys, and welcome to our awesome young leadership.
We really want to thank all the people who helped make this possible. The stage isn't big enough to invite everyone up here. So So I'd like to thank everyone who came up from Blueberry Hill and Canton and Cleveland and Portland. And our next guest is actually from Dallas. He's going to introduce Mark. But I was really inspired by the Better Block project last year, and as well as going to the BBC. And I hope you enjoyed a few minutes of us modeling placemaking up here for you. And we're really excited to kind of invite you into this space for the first time. We wanted to give a little bit of you're a test drive for Big Love on Saturday, because it's going to be about 10 times as many people, hopefully, at least. So, yeah, Better Block was an amazing experience that happened last year in North Hill. How many people were there last year? Awesome. That's amazing. So yeah, we're trying to build that momentum and kind of make our own Akron hybrid of Better Block and city repair. So now we're trying to introduce the city repair ideas to you, and we're just really excited because we really feel like we can make this an Akron brand here. We have a lot of resources that people don't really realize that we can use to build places in our communities, and I really hope that everyone can participate and join us in this movement. I think Beth has something to say.
I really want to thank our core team that without your guys' love and dedication, this would not be possible, especially having a giant public meeting the same week as our giant community festival. So Big Love is going into its third year, and it originally came around as an idea of what would it look like to create a transformational festival for and by the city of Akron. And as we were doing that, we started to realize that we are placemakers that want to help transform the city of Akron, mostly by facilitating people transforming their own spaces. So last year I was up in Cleveland getting with the Green Triangle, which is a wonderful collective that teaches permaculture, and I was getting my permaculture design certification. And as a part of that, they had Mark as an extra special guest speaker in from Portland. And as he started talking about neighbor-led neighborhood design facilitated by permaculturists or gardeners and healing practitioners and artists, I was like, wow, that is what Big Love is starting to become. We have to go to Portland. So a couple of us went to Portland and we got some great training from them. I come from this world as a community organizer since I was 16, and seeing the way that people are able to take over and transform their spaces in a way that creatively solves the problems of their own issues in their community and helps them find a deep-rooted sense of identity and ownership over their own neighborhoods is remarkable. It's unlike anything I've ever seen being there, and it's inspired me to really want to do that here. And I'm so thankful that they have started this movement of tactical urbanism, of doing pop-up spaces to semi-permanent spaces to become permanent spaces so that people can truly design the spaces that they inhabit from their own perspective, their own wills, their own desires, so that we don't just have a bunch of cool hipster people becoming gentrifying factors in poor neighborhoods, so that we don't have just giant vacant spaces that people spent a bunch of money on giving to developers that nobody uses, but that it's actually thriving, living spaces in our communities. And both Jason and Mark have done, and Kirk have all done a lot of work to create spaces like that. Next up, we have Jason Roberts that helped to found the Better Block project. He's from Texas, and we are so incredibly grateful to have you. We are so grateful for your commitment to the city of Akron, and we're grateful for your insight into tactical urbanism and how we might use it here. Jason Roberts.
It's great to be here, and really an honor and a pleasure to be introducing the featured guest tonight. Again, my name is Jason Roberts. I head a project called The Better Block. And raise your hand if you guys know about The Better Block or involved with The Better Block and stuff we've done. Great. We started that project. So the project we did in Akron was one of the best we've ever pulled off, and it wasn't really us, it was you, and that's the reason why it was so incredible. Tina and John Uger, who led that project from the neighborhood, did a bang-up job. But the trajectory for the project that I helped develop with my community for the Better Block really took its life from studying other efforts around the country and around the world, because we started our work around 2010, 2011. And around that time when I was studying different ideas, there was one project I kept seeing from this amazing group of people in Portland where they just take these intersections and start painting them. And I remember thinking, like, what is happening in this place? This place seems magical. They're doing these beautiful projects in the street, and the community is just coming together and bringing these places to life. And I remember thinking, like, I want to apply some of these ideas in our own work, and thinking, like, one day if I'm lucky, maybe I can meet the people that were involved and help create those projects. And so it so happened a few years later, as our work started building and getting some notoriety, Mark Lakeman and I were on a stage together at Harvard, of all places, where we both felt like we were fish out of water. We didn't belong there. And it was a chance for me to finally connect with somebody who I had admired from afar for a long time. And then a few months later, I got to go to Portland and got to experience his neighborhood. And if you get a chance, just going to Mark's neighborhood alone, not just what he's done throughout the city, because it's inspiring, it's heartening. He is the epitome of a humanitarian. But beyond that, you go to his neighborhood and he's got like a pizza oven he's built on one corner of the street for everyone to use. He's built a tea station that people come in and just fill up with hot water and you can have tea. He's got a little kids area where kids can play on a corner. He's got his neighbors to take down their fences. I'm probably giving away your entire presentation, aren't I? But where they've got edible vegetables growing throughout the neighborhood. People can crisscross to the neighborhood, and then beyond that, he's making structures in his backyard for his chickens, and he's trying to study the social happiness of chickens and building structures for them to make their lives great as well. So that's the kind of person you're dealing with. With that being said, I am truly honored again and admire this man greatly. In fact, whenever I found out he was going to be here, I wasn't intending to be in Akron. I've got a project I'm working on right now, and when David Swirsky with the Big Love team told me he was going to be there, like, I'm going to book a flight because I want Mark to come just give me some advice selfishly, tell me what I should be doing on this project. And I got him to do that, so thank you, Mark, for that. So with no further ado, I'm honored to present Mr. Mark Lakeman.
Well, geez. Okay. So that I don't forget, I want to do this first. My dear friend Kirk Rea is sitting in the front, and he's also here from Portland, and
We love Kirk.
yeah, we love Kirk. He's also known as Kirkules, so if you need any huge things lifted, just talk to him. But he's here too, and if you want to have conversations after the presentation, you can talk to both of us as well as our amazing hosts who also know a whole lot about what we're talking about tonight. Chris McClellan is also here. He's part of, and also my friend Gordon is here. They're part of Cleveland City Repair. You can talk with them too. And also, so I don't forget, we have this cookbook here. Cookbook for basically troublemakers. Gosh, I'd sure love to change the streets into public squares, or I'd sure like to plant corn where there are cars right now. So this can kind of help you know how to do that. And it's a fundraiser to help support the communities that we're working with all over the country. So it's hard to know how to begin sometimes, because placemaking has so many different dimensions to it. And I'm going to set this water down. Just picked it up, set it down. Placemaking has so many different parts and pieces to it, and this is how we can understand placemaking in the USA from my point of view. So we all know that we save our money. A lot of people who can save money fly across the ocean to go visit places where you'll see people, sometimes even in cultural costumes, speaking their own languages. Oftentimes they'll have their own belief systems. They'll have all kinds of different cultural practices that tend to be unifying and expressive of stories that they have been sharing together with their ancestors for thousands, perhaps thousands of years. And then you come home to the USA, and you might notice that people don't talk to each other as much here. And if you pay attention to what the media says, or what maybe when you're traveling, people say, gosh, Americans, all you guys talk about it is the price of things. Or maybe you talk more about you than you do about with the people that you're among. Interesting things to hear from people. And when we come back to the USA, a lot of times we're just really excited to save more money in order to go on vacation, to vacate and go elsewhere again. And I love our nation because I love our people and I love our communities, and I think there's so much more that's right about us than isn't. You know, completely. You know, unlike the media that tells us what's yet wrong more again today. I want to hear them say things like, yay, we have thumbs. You know, we apparently can do, we worked a long time to have thumbs, you know, evolutionarily speaking. We should be excited about that still because it took so long. Or, yay, we have ears so that we can actually listen to each other. You know, they say of Americans we can only speak for we can only listen for more than 15 seconds or something like that before we think of sex, apparently. I bet that means a bunch of you guys are doing that right now. Or we're more afraid of public speaking than we are of death. And I know that that stuff is a consequence of our isolation. All of it is a consequence of our isolation. If all we have to talk about is ourself, if all we have to talk about is the price of things, it's probably because we're living in a perfunctory reality where so many of our interactions are dependent on whether or not we have money to pay for a good or service. You know, and then we go back to the home zone where we live in isolation in communities that feature, get this, United States neighborhoods have the lowest number of community gathering places of all first world nations. Now, why? I mean, this is why we save our money to fly across the ocean to visit places that are replete, that are infused, not just with place, not just with places, but with people that are integral with their environment. Like, they've been there a long time. You know, those Greeks, those Italians, you know, those Ethiopians, they've been there a long time. And their place expresses a story of their settlement patterns, you know? And at best, when they haven't been interfered with by colonialism, there's a village heart everywhere you go. And the strongest, most wonderful villages with the lowest with the lowest crime rates in the world and the highest indicators of public health are so infused with place that everywhere you look, there are people that are interacting and expressing themselves. They may even be dancing just because, as you walk through the streets that are so gorgeous that even the pathways are places. So then we come back and we earn money wanting to go away again to such places. The difference though, and we need to know this now, is that our communities were built by developers. They weren't built as expressions of our participation over time. So if a developer says, and I don't want to vilify developers because they are also part of a paradigm of isolation where it's just normal not to talk to each other. It's normal to be afraid of each other. And then reinforced by the media every single day, like here's what's wrong. Again, you know, today a new thing, same old story, new twist today. People say, oh, well, that's because we love that kind of news. No, we don't. I remember the time when it was announced that a place had been found in the world that no one had ever been before, and the headline was Shangri-La found. I mean, I saw that along the side of the road in a newspaper box, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to find a copy of that. I'll pull over the next newspaper stand and I'll get one. So I looked, and I saw a newspaper stand and it was empty. And then the next newspaper stand was empty. I couldn't find a copy of this news that told you that this dream landscape, you know, like Shangri-La is synonymous with heaven, you know, and people were like, heaven exists? Yeah, they'd found a valley up in the glaciers in the Himalayas where no one had ever been, and it featured all these subtropical species, and it was quite clear that no human being had ever found it. And that was such beautiful news that people wanted it. Like, the newspaper boxes were empty. That meant something to me. Like, we're craving, we're starving, we're hungry for awesome news. Yeah, I mean, and besides, what is the kind of news that you like to tell? Oh, I ran over a child today. You know, you want to go out and tell everyone about that? Oh, my bank account screwed up yet again. You want to tell people about that? Or do you want to tell them about your successes? And then you want them to actually hear you and say, wow, that's awesome, and then ask you a question? You know how you're sitting in a cafe and you hear someone just talking and talking and talking about themselves, and then the next person who gets a word in gets to just talk about themselves over and over and over again. And if you listen closely, you can hear that they're desperate to be heard, but nobody's listening. Like, are we really, is that what's happening to us? We won't even hear each other's most important sacred stories? That stuff is a consequence of our isolation, and we need to take it so personally now. So we're here to talk about placemaking and sustainability, but frankly, we ain't gonna be sustainable, you know, if we can't even hear each other. But it's bigger than that. The challenge of our times is so broad and deep, and I also think it's the greatest opportunity in all of world history right now. The pressure's on, time is running out. I mean, we love these kinds of movies, right? Oh my God, gotta fly across the planet in 5 seconds, you know, to push a certain button to save the world. Apparently we love these kinds of stories. We consume them like crazy as Hollywood cranks them out. So it's a little bit dramatic right now. We got a lot to deal with. And I know that we have the capacity to do it. But looking at American communities where we wake up in the morning not feeling excited and invigorated and like that yet again we have another day to live, I think there's a problem with that. So I've been to communities where this isn't true. I've visited many different communities, indigenous communities in the world, where people stand up and they speak from the deepest place inside of themselves, and they say things that the community is so receptive to and ready to hear. Where people are just so deeply, they live in a culture of mutuality, and I could be talking about Mayans, I could be talking about Africans, I could be talking about indigenous Australians, where people have still, somehow, their lives are more interconnected. So, there's so much more to this life, and I get to live in Portland, Oregon, where I get to see it playing out in shockingly beautiful ways every day. So I want to tell you about it tonight. And I want to talk about Portland, Oregon as part of this story, because we fully know that we're part of a network of cities. We know that the problems of Portland, Oregon are similar to the ones that Akron faces. Our downtown was dying, people were moving out, developers were ruling our political culture. Something happened though, something remarkable happened, and now we are the one city in the USA, one major city where community participation is skyrocketing. We are meeting and exceeding our own goals. We're the only major city in North America that has actually met and exceeded the carbon reduction targets of Kyoto. Amazing. We have more than 50 farmers markets every week in Portland, Oregon. We actually are measurably driving less every year, and per person we're emitting less carbon measurably every year. We have the most bike lane miles and the most bike commuters by far. The list of ways that we're exceeding our own projected goals is amazing, and then the outcomes that nobody ever imagined that are now measurable as well are incredible too. Like, suddenly we have the most polite driving culture in all the country. Like, you can't even get any road rage around there. Like, God dang it, get mad. Nobody's honking. Like, we have the most dog parks of all cities, you know. We have the most, I won't say the best anymore because everybody loves beer, but we are the beer culture of the universe, known as Beervana. But those are things that come out of a culture that has started to fall in love, not in a narcissistic way, but everyone with each other. Collaborative culture, visionary culture, one where people are excited and receptive and supportive of each other. And we've definitely verified something that we all know in our hearts about ourselves. So we're a culture that says, yes, Like, I don't know if this was the first time ever, but there was a young woman, only 13 years old, who said during a community charrette that we were facilitating, hey, maybe we could cut the curbs to allow water to run off of the street. So instead of paying billions of dollars to deal with our combined sewer runoff, maybe we could just remediate water right on site. And so this first prototype was created, a park, and the whole thing was her idea. But the reason it happened is because we are a city that says yes. I don't know if the mayor's here tonight, but part of why the tide has turned is we had a mayor who knew how to say yes. And he finally was like, just bring it on. Like, bring forth your proposals. Here's all the goals and objectives of the city. What can you do to meet these goals? We'll find the support and we'll make these things happen. So this young girl innovated stormwater runoff remediation swales in our city that's now received millions of dollars in funding. Homeless people said, we can take care of ourselves. By God, we have women living in the street every night. Can you imagine what that's like to be alone on the streets? Homeless people have skills and talents and names and stories and families. By God, they must be able to help themselves. The fundamental question is whether or not we remain a resource or we're just a problem to be managed. Can you affirm our humanity? Can you affirm our dignity? Hell yes. So we've been creating self-built homeless villages in Portland, Oregon, and then replicating them around the country, and they're better in every way to not divide up families and send them off to separate shelters. These things cost more than 22 times less than a government-run shelter, and they're better in every way, beginning with the fact that everyone who lives in such a place manages it, works within it, has roles and responsibilities, gains life skills and even job skills, and then they go back into the society stronger and improved and ready to be productive again. This one was just legalized last week in Portland. So I'm telling you these stories about Portland because, yes, we can. Portland was beset. So much of our physical fabric was torn down by this corrupt political culture. They were building parking lots everywhere, and finally this one question was called. Will we build yet another parking lot on this corner, or will we finally have a public square after 150 years without even one public square in all the city? And fortunately, the proponents of Place won, and we created a cultural magnet that revolutionized not just our city, but the entire region. After 150 years, we finally had a social commons where somewhere time and space was not for sale, and everyone can say, I belong there. And you know, there's people that write about this stuff. They say that public space, a sense of commons, affects even your dreams. It affects how you dream. If you only live in a compartmentalized reality where everything is for sale, you dream dreams of being alone. If you live in a place where there's a sense of connection to other people, and you have functional commons that are also symbolic, you dream differently, you perceive differently, you feel differently. Okay, but more about more about homelessness. There are so many homeless people now in this country because of the state of the economy, and they're all moving to the West Coast to get to a more temperate climate. And even though Portland, Oregon has the lowest unemployment rate in all the country, there are homeless people everywhere in the city now. But we are a culture of yes, and we want to affirm the dignity of all people, and so we're housing them. All of the women on the streets have been housed. All of the veterans in the streets have been housed. And now all of the remaining men will be housed in places like this utterly DIY village that has this wonderful urban wall. It's surrounded by generative spaces, cafes, bookshops, places where homeless people can actually employ themselves in order to financially support their village. That's made as a barn raising by the whole city that comes to their rescue. And when I say homeless people, I mean our daughters, our sons, our fathers and mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers that are out there on the street that have real stories and real lives and real needs, and none of them are boogeymen or should be vilified. The mayor of Portland is doing this. He's like building 20 more of these prototypes, and some of them are larger, denser, with huge open floor plates where homeless people will be able to build their own environments. And the city's putting money into it at the rate of like $25 per person per night, which is a deal compared to $90 a night, which is what it normally costs to house people in a shelter. And then you're actually helping them, supporting them to be safe and warm, and to rebuild themselves while they're stable. We're even imagining giant, tall prototypes, because as long as you're going to build a tall building, you might as well throw in a few floor plates in there for people who can become the staff that run the building so that they actually have livelihood while they have spaces inside of the building to live, rather than in the streets. The man behind this one, who's part of the largest green building company in the city, a development company, said, let's bring everyone inside at last. Let's create a building form that expresses the fact that there's diversity in this building, economically and socially. So I'm inviting you all to come to Portland, Oregon in June for the Village Building Convergence, which is the 16th annual version of this. We're going to be building 40 initiatives all over the city simultaneously, and everybody's already working, getting everything ready. Getting ready for this huge barn raising. And we're basically being time activists. We're done with this 24/7, 365 reality of living in a cubicle, this repetitious reality. We want to live as our ancestors did, in a way where we're noticing the cycles of time. And the way that we're doing it in Portland is we're grabbing that point in the turning of the wheel when we used to come together to raise the barn. And what that does is it reorganizes how we live. You build community up to the barn raising. You party like crazy as you're building together, where everyone has a role, and then all through the summer, everyone's more in love than they ever were before, and then it starts again. And that's what used to power our people. So we're doing that in Portland, Oregon. Come and see this. So here's Portland, and this is what it used to be like. So so not extraordinary, not what it is now. We're like every other town. According to the National Land Ordinance of 1785, all cities and towns laid out after that point were basically regimented according to the dictates of the Roman colonial grid that was adopted as part of the National Land Ordinance. When you play the game Monopoly, you're actually playing the National Land Ordinance because the game is designed to replicate that experience. So hopefully when you play this game, you say, oh, now I see why the only form of commons is a jail and a parking lot, right? You should ask, where's the community center? Where's the public square? Where's the park? Where's a shred of commons? Oh, everything that is a form of commons is for sale, like Baltic Avenue, even Broadway's for sale. Okay, so this is actually a condensed version of the National Land Ordinance. This is a really big deal. So if we arrive, in the late 20th century, early 21st century, to find that we're living in houses that don't even address the street, because people are saying, the developers are saying, well, who needs a porch anymore? Americans don't like to talk. And then this idea of driving to the mall in your car, because who needs Main Street anymore? Portland, people in the USA just want to consume all the time. This is an outgrowth of this kind of mania, as if we're playing our lives on a game board where everything is for sale. I swear, you can find out about this from Noam Chomsky if you really want to get deep immersion on how uniquely intense and exploitive our history has been. But you can also just fly to any other nation and see that their crime rates are somehow very, very different, and their public health statistics are different, and their sense of place is much more lovely generally. There are places like Braddock, Pennsylvania, that can tell you how intensely dystopic it can become. 90% depopulated. And it wasn't, what's happened to this town isn't because all of the working class didn't show up one day, to do their job, to feed their children, to pay for their homes. No, it was that the steel industry pulled out and sent the jobs elsewhere. This is a pretty familiar story. Yeah, entire abandoned neighborhoods with only retirees left, with bars on their windows because they're afraid of their own environment now and they have nowhere else to go. This is how dystopic it can become. And on one hand, you can say it's not because of the community. They've been doing the work to power the society. And on the other hand, you can also, if we are going to look in the mirror about this, I want to say it's our fault. Why? First of all, because I think it's ridiculous that we ever agreed to let our entire society be basically regulated and managed by the people who aren't even doing the work. This is the absurdity. We've agreed to power the entire society and yet be powerless in our own communities to even slow traffic. Like, you have to go knock on a door or maybe fill out a form to get the permission to do anything in your community. Who ever agreed to that? And yet it's all the same all across the country because of this. So there's a reason, and there's a basis to the story, and when we're interested in systemic change, by God, we need to be interested in, if we're interested in systemic change, we need to be interested in root causes. Why is this happening all across the country? Okay, so here's another way to look at it. Look at what an intersection can be like in some countries. Like this is the great intersection called Siena, where Pisa, Milan, Rome, and Florence all meet in a great intersection in the Tuscan hills. And then this wonderful village arose around all of the activity of trading that happened in the location. It's a great intersection, one of the greatest in the world, and it's called a piazza, which means place. Over here, it's just a sort of ubiquitous intersection that we've all seen before. You stop and wait for the light to change, hoping to eventually get to a place. I think it's interesting that both of these intersections have dominant institutions with arches, but that's about where the similarity ends. The fact that this is the palace of the people that brings people together to deliberate and celebrate and then spill out into their glorious intersection is why this gets to be a place. And over here, the rise of corporate culture and what it's done in such an exploitive way to our people and our place is simply the next chapter in the National Land Ordinance. We need to understand this and feel about it so deeply and become the culture of yes, not waiting around for anyone else anymore to decide whether or not we have power of place. Okay, so in Portland, Oregon, we were inspired. We looked around the world and we said, my God, 150 years without a public square, look at the value that they provide for all these other places. And so we created this. And it was against the power of the mayor. Like, it was like parking garage or public square. And the mayor said, I'm not going to let you do that because if you have a public square, you'll gather. Which sort of shows what his sort of class-based fears were. Oh no, if people talk, maybe they'll realize what's going on and disagree with this reality that puts so much money in his pocket at the end of the day and not into the pockets of people with families. Okay, one of the greatest public squares in all the world. After 150 years, we created it, and it revolutionized our entire city and the region, and it continues to replicate itself with these emanations or ripples going out. Because finally in our city, there was a place, there is a place now, where time and space and life is not for sale, and everybody knows they belong. What does that do to the heart of a culture that's been starved for place? So speaking of place, my mother's kind of this Indiana Jones grandmother. She sort of likes to always be out crawling around in old caves and ruins, looking for evidence of common culture. Here she is standing deep inside the earth, looking up at the surface of a well that features these double helix rampways that take donkeys down to get water and then donkeys up carrying water. What happened in this case was these people in Umbria realized that after an extended drought, they had to somehow get through the rock down to where they could always get water. And when they undertook this, they knew that most of them would die before they ever got down to water, but they were doing it for people who didn't even exist. Like when people say, oh, Americans, human beings, they're fundamentally selfish and self-interested. They don't care about a common life. I absolutely disagree, because these are the kinds of places and cultures that we have come from, and this is what is in our hearts still. And when we speak and somebody else uses their ears to hear us, that's enough evidence for me. So, it used to be that we saw that we had way more than we shared than that we didn't for millennia. So when we go to such places as this one's cosmological. The tower sweeps across the surface of this piazza like a great sundial that shortens and lengthens as the seasons change. It's actually measuring the way that the earth tilts and rotates over time, not just a place. Incredible, incredible. So what else about it? I mean, it's the fact that a social culture around it has such powerful interwoven stories over time that they're absolutely the definition of a resilient, sustainable culture in a social way. Certainly their carbon footprints are lower because they're walking everywhere, because everything is within easy walking distance. It's the nature of how the town is laid out. And of course it existed before cars, for sure, but why do they even need cars? Because this is how they live within this habitat. Kind of like a snail needs a shell or a bird needs a nest. Human beings need a conducive place. And frankly, unless a developer understands how that works, it's not going to happen. So somehow we have to retrofit it, and that's what we're talking about with placemaking and city repair. The kinds of spaces where intergenerational relationships play out in our midst, where a grandmother can look into the eyes of her granddaughter, and when she knows that the songs and the stories of the people have been heard, she and her sister here know that we will persist into the future. And that's what we're talking about. Americans leave where they live. Every 4 to 7 years, Americans move, looking apparently for a better place or something, but not here. They remain in the place that their ancestors have always been, because it's part of their very identity. And I'm not trying to romanticize villages. There are all kinds of issues that are happening in communities around the world. But we need to remember some stuff. Like, do you remember that before cars existed for thousands of years, the streets were actually the spaces between our homes that brought us together for all of our cultural rituals and celebrations? And the greatest thing of all were the combined birthday parties of children. There are people alive now who remember the time before cars. In 1900, about 50 people a year would die in the streets of the city, and it wasn't of the country, and it wasn't because of cars. But by 1920, 30,000 people were being killed every year. At that point, Cincinnati and Kansas City tried to mechanically force cars to go no faster than 25 miles an hour. And at that point, the oil companies and the car companies stepped in and got the federal government to mandate that streets were now just for cars. And I say that no mother of any child ever got to weigh in on that and say, hey, wait a second, you've just removed millions of miles of public commons and given it's no longer available for a diverse set of uses. It's only a monoculture at this point. And they invented the crime of jaywalking. A jay was a person from the country who would walk as the crow flies, and instead now everyone had to walk long, straight, flat lines and only turn 90-degree angles in their reality without our consent, which always pisses Americans off, okay? So, but now you go through the American landscape, and we're so afraid of benches that when you even propose one, someone will say, as they said in my neighborhood, you're gonna put in a bench, you fools, don't you realize someone will sit there? Like, we have been so isolated that we're afraid of each other at this point, and we vilify homeless people who actually might be a veteran who's lost half of his leg to fight for you. You know, what's going on when we would even say such a thing? Okay, but this is what it comes down to for me. Every one of us has had a mother who was carrying us in her arms, looking for a place to sit in order to nurse us. And women all over this country are walking around without a place to rest while they do the service of giving birth to the whole society. And I say to you, we are not worthy of a sustainable society until we deal with that. You know what I'm talking about. So in Portland, Oregon, it's a culture of yes. And what does yes get you? It gets you a society. It gets you a place with more courage in your heart than you even knew you could feel. And getting up in the morning excited about the coming day. Here are firefighters painting ripples of water in a street intersection because it's legal to turn public street intersections into public squares in Portland for free. As many as you want. 17,000 of them are available in all the residential zones of the city to be converted into community gathering places. Here's our favorite transportation engineer working with children to build raised planters, because we didn't have enough money at the time in the Transportation Bureau, building raised planters in order to constrict the flow of traffic, to slow traffic, and also create habitat for pollinators, for pollinating insects in the streets, to meet multiple goals all at the same time. Here's another example, taking trash, computers being thrown away, basically toxic waste, and instead taking those and rebuilding them as computers to make them available to the larger community. If you volunteer 8 hours, you get a free rebuilt computer as part of the organization called Free Geek. This kind of stuff is shaking out of the sleeve of Portland, Oregon, and what's going on is we're seeing that the problems are clues to the solutions. Go to the problem and you'll find a poor design choice or a design opportunity on the flip side of the issue. This is how we take trash and turn it into wealth. We've built such an indomitable culture that people like this will actually get up in the morning and say, let's go plant some native edibles out in parks to benefit wildlife and actually create some stuff that people could eat if they're out there wandering around. They haven't asked the Parks Bureau for permission. It's that we own the city, so that they go out there and they just do it, because the Parks Bureau has the objective, and some neighbors say, well, let's buy the plants and go out and do it ourselves on our own authority. Okay, well that might sound a little weird, but along for the ride on this day was one of the founding employees of Microsoft who had been looking for a way to use his millions and millions of dollars to make the world a better place. So he invested in Portland, Oregon, and created one of the most fabulous urban agriculture initiatives in the world called Our Table, which you can find at ourtable.org. It's a regenerative farm based on food forest systems just outside of southwest Portland. And all the food, of course, is organic, and it only goes to Portland, Oregon, because part of the objective is to have as little a carbon footprint as possible as they transport the food. The urban agriculture movement in Portland, Oregon is stunning, it's dazzling, and yet it's still nascent, it's still just getting going. But we do have the shortest distance between where food is grown and where it's consumed of all cities, measurably. This is our design office surrounded by 84 varieties of edibles within food forest systems, vertical systems with 7 layers of food productivity, all within narrow strips of land that also help to shade the storefront windows. The social culture of Portland is engaged. People are sharing their stories and inspiring each other and working together in broad collaborations, including to address this issue. Like, okay, we've got all this waste. How do we turn it into resource and wealth once again? How do we build jobs out of the stuff that we normally just throw away? So we created an organization called Our United Villages, and this is the Rebuilding Center. It's kind of like a habitat center where you go to get recycled materials, except it's the biggest one in the USA, handling the most volume. The building itself is made out of all recycled and natural materials. Everyone who works here comes from within walking distance. They all have full health and dental benefits for themselves and their families, and they have living wages, and they're basically just reconditioning trash and selling it back to the community for pennies on the dollar compared to Home Depot or Lowe's. So this is reinvention, ingenuity, entrepreneurialism, coming out of the cracks of the society and being an economic engine for change. So you go inside the building and everywhere you look, there's all this gorgeous stuff all around you that you can't even believe how little it costs to buy a couple of code-approved double insulated French doors for something like $65 compared to $500 elsewhere. Their administrative offices entirely made out of reclaimed materials. Look at all of this creativity. This is the main entrance, made out of cob. It's a very adobe-like material made out of clay and sand and straw. This is another building that shook out of the sleeve of the social culture. This is for Picun, Cesar Chavez's farmers' rights organization, except in this case they decided to build the most energy efficient office building in the country and do it for a quarter of the cost that you would normally pay by getting all the kids involved. It's a youth training facility, so they said, let's train the youth by teaching them how to use a shovel and how to use a hammer and how to lift heavy things together. They built the whole building as an educational process for their culture. Now developers around the region are getting in on this act, and they're like, gosh, I don't just want to build stuff, I want to build a legacy. I want to make a way for people to talk. So this is micro infill co-housing here, where everyone owns their own house, but they all collectively own the land that they sit on, including the gardens and pathways and bike shelters. Then the city government decides to actually start subsidizing and incentivizing the creation of this, working with developers around the region. So again, common stewardship, separately owned buildings, collectively owned land. And then it starts spreading to all of these other cities. This is one on the Oregon coast where they've been doing these intersection installations to turn them into gathering places. Just a fabulous story. This is a 20-year vision plan that really began when they purchased the Masonic Lodge that was abandoned and turned it into an art center, and then used the central open space in the city to start creating a public square, beginning with the community garden. So here's one of the prime directives of sustainability, just to remember that all human habitat is supposed to help us speak to each other and help us communicate and interact, not just to build and to construct or move things around as American cities have been designed, but to fundamentally help us have relationships of mutual benefit. But it's a hard road when you live in a less dense neighborhood or a more dense neighborhood that's been laid out by somebody you've never even met. Like here's the neighborhood that I live in when we first got started. Nobody ever, no mother or father ever said, hey, what fun, let's not have a single public square. I vote for no square. So that we'll be voiceless and then all of our authority will be held by people downtown that we've never even met. No, and yet it's the same all across the country. We need to know this story. So after all, when we want to talk about communication and interaction and having a place that's convivial, we need to remember that the demos, the very unit, the physical social unit of democracy means people in a place. Like, instead of neighborhood, we should call ourselves a demos, claim the village heart, and then just thrive through our participation. That's what democracy is supposed to be built on. But what we've got, it's as if you've taken the tree of our society and cut off the roots. How is that going to live? That's like putting a flower in a vase of water, and it's just sucking water, but pretty soon it's going to be dead. That's an unsustainable situation. The great tree of our society needs to have complete root systems that draw the nutrients and moisture of the earth into the greater body of the society. And that's through the grassroots, the root tips of the great tree of our people. So this has been our strategy in the city, to take those places that should have brought us together in a convergence and transform them once again, and do it all over the city. And then as we do it in our city, it's been replicating in all of these other cities, and it's not Portland's idea. It's coming back to an ancient idea of people in place. Little girls know how to do this. We've sat with second grade girls and we've asked them, girls, can you think of a way that adults can make the streets safer and get kids outside to play and make it so that people build more identity and take more pride in their environment and go on with the goals and objectives. And this little girl looked at us and she said, "Are you serious? You can't figure out how to do that?" So she said, "Let me show you." She makes this little red circle and she puts it down in the model. She says, "This represents a pony ride. I guarantee if you get a bunch of ponies out on the street, everyone's going to stop. They're going to get out. They're going to want to pet those ponies. They're going to want to ride those ponies. And you're going to have all these other things on the corners that bring people out of their houses." And this girl says, "I have such a better idea than that. I know for sure if you put an ice cream parlor right in the middle of the street, everyone's going to stop their cars. You can have all their favorite flavors. You can put tables and chairs on all the corner. You can have a community-sized skateboard so everyone can skate at once because they're going to be so happy." And if you have traveled to the other great nations of the world that feature the village heart, you know that this is what the greatest architects of all time have done in all of these other places of our own ancestors. So we are hardwired placemakers even when we are small children. And this is why we go to such places, to see where people live and work together. And their quality of life is so much higher and not characterized by despair and depression and obesity and so many things that come out of our designed environment. Okay, so this is how it used to be. A landscape that facilitated interaction and its cultural expression because it's designed by the people who live there as opposed to the development grid. Notice the center of this block is an open space. Notice that this one has no such open space from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Whoops! Forgot the middle of the block needs to be open because our ancestors were like that for thousands of years. And right here where the intersection brings people together all throughout the village, whoops, it's just a traffic corridor now. All across the country, really? No geographic variation, no distinct social cultures, creating village forms that are unique ever? Okay, that's not placemaking. This is placemaking, where people say, we are the village. The stuff doesn't even matter. As soon as we link hands and we look each other in the eye, the village starts to burst into flames in the middle of us. And we can see it because feelings rise in our chest. It's like this, to realize that we live on a game board. In many ways we've been set against each other, even by racial segregation, to say, oh, you have darker ones over here, lighter ones over here. But I like to play the game differently, frankly. New chess doesn't work that way. New chess starts off by having the community organizer pawns trade sides. So we have a lighter one over here, darker one over here. They meet in the middle and they start off by saying, I'm so sorry for what happened in the last game. We attacked you and we killed you and you killed us and we knocked each other off the board. This game is totally unsustainable. It's designed to end. Can we play the game differently? So they decide to get into small groups with facilitators and they're sitting there sharing their stories. But then they get mad because they start to realize what's been happening and they go back to the back row and push the other guys off the board. The tall ones with oppressive, funny hats, knock them off the board. But that's not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about this, where somebody says, it's true, I have way more than my share. And other people say, I've got all these ideas I want to try out. Everybody's kind of ready to go. This is Portland, Oregon, now. It's always been up to the pawns. The pawns are the working class, right? With all the skills and talents, they power the entire society. Finally, the pawns are like, I'm just done. You guys playing the same game every time? At least let us have a TV, So here they finally get a dining room table. They put in some hot tubs down here. They've grown 3 Asian pears and a squash, and they're having a harvest festival. Leave them alone. We're totally serious. This is what Portland, Oregon is doing. We are re-vegetating the game board and making it happen on our terms, like this. Street weddings. You're certainly calming a lot of traffic and bringing people together and meeting all of these issues that beset us. And this is what's happening at the huge scale for the city. When the mayor said, I won't let you do that, we went out that very weekend and painted the rooftop of this 2-story parking garage, and we said, no, space becomes place right now. And this is what happened. One of the greatest public spaces in all the world. Okay, and it didn't stop. The most, as I said, the most bike commuters and the most bike lane miles by far. I think it's fantastic that the Transportation Bureau is authorizing itself to put banana slugs on top of their little bike graphics here. The most green buildings of all cities by far. The most farmers markets. Like, we just built this tremendous, gigantic bridge, the first in the history of the USA that is car-free. All other modalities for transportation except cars at Tillicum Crossing. The artistic culture is like nothing this planet has ever seen before, including the music culture and also the food culture. By broadest acclaim, the most creative with the most locally sourced food. As I said before, the shortest distance between where food is grown and where it's eaten. You just gotta come to see the beer, taste the beer. The urban growth boundary that causes us to constantly reinvest in the city that we've already created rather than depleting the existing city as sprawl proceeds rampantly out of control. We have greater dreams, and this is the challenge I have for Akron tonight. You know, if you're only looking up, trying to get to the surface, you never learn what it's like to get and see the great view of the possibilities beyond. We need to set our sights way higher than just mere sustainability, or however we define like our next goal. Like, what would it be like to thrive like we've never imagined before? That's what Portland, Oregon is doing. We've gotten past the threshold to see things farther, to more distant horizons than we ever knew were possible. So here, coming down to the community level, these 2 little girls had gotten hit by a car just trying to cross a busy street to get to a park. All these people living in 500 houses landlocked by busy streets got together angry. Like, what in the world is going on here? Why is there no place for children to play? We invited the neighborhood historian Eileen to the conversation, and she said, well, you've studied westward expansion and manifest destiny in high school. We live in a framework that houses us as a working class so that we cut down trees, we mine resources, we send the proceeds to the East Coast, and we never create culture. It's designed like that. You've studied this in school, and people were saying, no, it can't be true, it can't be true. It's an old story, but she brought these goals and objectives to build community, to enhance the community with gathering places, to address issues of safety and livability, calming traffic, beautifying and inspiring other people. Like, we've got these goals in every city, usually unaddressed. So during that discussion, all the adults were ready to give up. Like, how in the world could we do that? We don't have money, we don't know the mayor, how could we do it? Fortunately, there was, again, a 13-year-old young woman who was there in the discussion, and she said, I've done a chart of what everyone does for a living around this intersection, in the middle of the neighborhood. Maybe we could repurpose some existing public space. And what if we even knew each other? Could we work together? She handed this to the adults, and she said, adults, connect the dots. What if we knew each other? Could we work together? And the adults said, wow, there's a chef. We all like to eat. Amazing. There's a doctor. We all get sick. Gosh, there's a community worker. Maybe we could be a community. There's a social worker. We all have social problems. There's a doctor, there's an architect, a carpenter, an ironsmith, a plumber, an electrician. Within 5 minutes, it looked like this. And then the young woman said, throw in the stay-at-home parents, throw in the children, throw in the dogs even, and it became absolutely black with all of the layers of connection. So a woman, a mother during that meeting, just ran out the door and she said, I can't even take it anymore. And she ran down to the intersection and she put in what she called the world's first 24-hour self-service chalk station. And when we came out of the meeting, the village insurrection was already at work here. Then we called the Department of Transportation and we said, we've got this idea. We know that we can slow traffic and meet all of these objectives if you'll just let us propose this idea. And they said, that's impossible. Besides, it's public space, so nobody can use it. And we were like, what? Did you just hear what you said? You just said, isn't that incredible what you said? And they're like, oh, you're so frustrating. Why don't you go home? And we said, we're already home. There's nowhere else to go. So it was so frustrating to have this conversation. We said, we're coming down to your office right now because there's one question we want to ask you, which is this. When we got there, we said, are you saying that after 30 years of paying for one of these little tiny houses, after all that work, we have nothing in common, we have no power where we live, and you who have never even stood here in your life have all the power over us? And they're like, duh, that's how the grid works. So we said, not anymore. So this is what we did. We took over the streets, and you know what it was? We just said, is the barn raising legal or not? Is it even okay for anyone to legislate it out of our very memory? Or are we still villagers? And so we did this anyway, we got in trouble. Ed, the giant policeman, came along and he saw what we'd done and he said, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. When transportation gets mad at you, I'm not even going to report you. And when transportation gets mad, call me and the police force will stand with you against transportation. What? So we won, and the city council unanimously legalized this for every neighborhood to do as many times as they want for free all across the city, to as many as 17,000 intersections. So yeah, world's first 24-hour solar-powered self-service T-station, world's first little free library here at this intersection. All of these different stations might be a first of their kind, but it's replicating the kinds of features that happen around a village square. The kinds of places we love to go to. But now you don't need to go away. You can stay home and be in the village of your dreams. And amazing, just like a clear cut starts to recover, after trees have been cut down, so will a community recover, and the great birthday parties of the streets start to return, to regenerate with the puppet shows that happen in the streets, the piñata parties, the great gatherings of all the community where you have more friends than you could possibly deal with. Then we created a mobile version to take this idea out into across the city, serving free chai and chocolate cake. Everywhere it went, people were ready to share desserts and drinks, like this. And then we held hands around the entire city because so many people had become connected in an event called Hands Around Portland. It happened again and again and again. And then we partied like animals, because we were wearing animal costumes by the thousands, and we flooded downtown into our great public square. Then we went to our blocks to create internal pathways. And then we created gathering places throughout the blocks, all of them ecological prototypes. We reinvented houses and turned them into schools. More and more urban agriculture like this all around the block. Urban orchards. Water systems integrated with gray water and even black water systems. Insanely beautiful chicken palaces. This is what it would look like to actually address climate change and save the world block by block. And then we started to do it all over the city. Like in the Sunnyside neighborhood, of course they would choose the logo, the sunflower, and put that down in the streets. And now our awesome friends at the Department of Transportation say, we have never seen anything build community like this. And it's like, yeah, duh. Maybe human beings need a gathering place at every single scale of the community. Overlooked neighborhood, creating their own story. Out in the Cully neighborhood, same old story, their story. Again and again. What's it like to stand on common ground? What it does is melt the insolvable polarities that the political system keeps throwing at us that divide our culture constantly. Instead, this brings people together. What's it like to get teenagers involved so that they design what happens in the street and they install it? What happens is not vandalism, ever, but instead a pride of place and change behaviors. Birthday cakes replicating the intersection right outside their doors, like this, and this, and this. On and on, each one creating their own story, their own unique expression, designed and funded and installed by them. The spectacular set of features that constitute the furniture of community out in public space. It's free now to create a solar-powered cob kiosk. All these other features, including community composting facilities out in what you guys would call the Devil Strip. In people's front yards, gathering places. In this case, inspired by this little girl, where a man says, what would the world look like to a girl? And this little girl says, well, it would look like this. And then the community served her vision. That's what a sustainable society would look like. And like Lydia Dolman, one of the great leaders in our community, has said, well, the world we live in has been created mostly by white men between 35 and 70, who can barely even tell their wives they love them or hug each other. Maybe it would be a more full spectrum expression of the possible emotions that we all feel. And maybe it would have a sense of humor and delight and curvaceousness and beauty that we've never seen before. So I'd say that we should run that sustainable culture because it will be so much more fun and rewarding than anything we know now. Okay, and sort of to wrap up, this is the first homeless village, self-built in the United States, called Dignity Village, and it persists till this day, replicating itself across the USA and Canada. This is a neighborhood. This is the first tiny home village in the United States that was built as an expression of solving, adverse issues. And this is what it really looks like from above, drawn by one of our interns. And this is the collective impact of more than 450 projects in this city alone. But I'm saying, you're not going to get 450 done all at once. Like we did, you'll start with 1, and then that will lead to 7, and then that will lead to 18. So don't worry about doing it all at once, just start. Just start in any way that makes sense to Akron, and then we'll see what happens. So thank you.
Unleash the creativity of the ponies and the heart of the people of Akron. All right, so we're going to spend just a moment having Jessica and Beth briefly describe what the next steps are, and then we're going to engage in some Q&A, okay? You might be taller than me.
Not by very much. So we're getting ready to launch this program in Akron, and we'd like to kind of give a brief overview of the timeline, and just so that you can ask questions about that as well as Mark's presentation. We just thought that would be good for the audience. So.
Really quick, Jessica, I have a question for you. Why is this important to Akron? For you, from your perspective.
A lot of people here may think I'm a Highland Square resident, but I'm actually from South Akron. And growing up at the crux of the Central Interchange really taught me a lot about the isolation. My mom found out about Miller South, so she shipped me off to that school as soon as she found out about it, and that's kind of made me a lot of the person I am now. So it was that jump from my community that was very isolated to a school that brought kids from all over the city, and they were allowed to express themselves through drama, dance, music, art, whatever it was. I jumped around and did all the interest areas over my 5 years there. And then I got accepted to the Firestone IB program and the art program. So just like jumping around from the different neighborhoods of the city, I realized like what's going on in South Akron is, we're just kind of getting like left behind. And as I've come home from living in Colorado or Brooklyn or Central America, I realized I'm like watching my neighborhood disappear before my eyes. It's like, this is where I was born. This is like what made me who I am. And I'm watching it disappear. Like, what can I do to like make this process go back the other way to like regenerating itself? So when I found out about the city repair project, I'm like, this would be amazing in my neighborhood. There's already my mom who still lives there, who has really great connections with the people who are still there, and a lot of the people who are in transition there. She's always trying to make connections with people and create spaces where they can come and gather. She has a few community gardens there, and she welcomes people from any part of the city to come and help, and I'm really proud of her for doing that and modeling that behavior for me. So that's one of the major reasons why I really feel like city repair would be a great addition to the many tools that we have to rebuild our city.
Right, and to feed off of what Jessica just said, city repair in Akron is not going to necessarily at all look like what it does in Portland. Portland is beginning to have an overpopulation problem. We have 12 households of people that leave this city every week on average. So it's going to look different, but it's so incredibly important that we own these spaces that I think that Mark just displayed. And the way that we want to start to begin that process is that by May 1st, we will have our site applications due. If you grab one of these flyers that are all over the building, and certainly by the back table where you got your name tags and everything, it'll have all this laid out. So May 1st, we're asking that your site applications are due. For more information on that, you can contact us. All our contact information is on the back. And then from there, between April to June, we will be training our trainers. And part of that is that between June 2nd and June 12th, We will be going to Portland for their village building convergence, and they have a very special training set aside for our facilitators to learn more of their process. A little before that, we will also be doing some community organizing trainings for our facilitators. May 18th is actually our kickoff event. That is when we will have all of the sites picked. And if you are a site, you get 10 neighborhood trainings, 1 a week, that are based in various amounts of tools to put in your tool bag, whether that is design charrettes to help people figure out what they want in their areas, or whether that's community organizing to help people actually bring their neighbors together to do these design charrettes. And then Akron, between August 13th to 15th, which that might be extended a little bit, we will actually be doing our own Akron City Repair around the city. We're hoping to do anywhere between 5 to 10 sites, depending on how much participation or how much people have the ability to do this within their own neighborhoods. And just because we say no this year doesn't mean we don't say yes next year. It also in part depends on our capacity as well, so I hope that you understand that. And we really encourage you to please be involved. If you think that you have a site in mind of your neighborhood, we will help you build it. We will help you put it together. Like I said before, if we say no this year, then we will help you build that capacity for next year, because we really want to see our city be rebuilt for and by the people that are here, and not for some developer's dream or some artistic hipster that comes in and decides things for you. Though,
Take some Portland hipsters back.
though we don't want them to always make decisions for us. But we really am very excited that you guys were able to come here tonight. And it's not, and without you, none of this is possible. So thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
So Mark, we have a few questions for you. I was wondering how many breaths you took during that presentation. Really impressive. So, come on up. So the first question we have is, we'd like for you to reflect a bit on your collective experience doing this work. What are let's just say the 3 biggest insights you have in terms of what's really critical to support the growth of these kinds of efforts in any city?
Great question. Well, sometimes people ask, what are the greatest impediments? I think, you're really asking what makes these things happen. Well, some people would guess that it's the consent of authorities, but that isn't it. I think it's your own urge or will. It's kind of like an indomitable feeling. Sometimes it rises up in people when they say, I've had enough, or this is the line. But it's a creative feeling. And it's maybe a healing impulse. I think that's the ultimate thing. And then connected to that is to be able to speak with people in a partnership tone. I think everyone has this tone in them, and when you speak this way, people can hear that you're not threatening, but that you're inviting. You're inviting them to collaborate. Like when we got in trouble with the Transportation Bureau, and they tried to react with us, we were prepared not to react. And we spoke with this invitational tone. And when they said, you don't have the power to do this, we just kind of brushed it aside like a Jedi Knight would or something. And we said, your neighborhood also is missing a public square, and everyone needs a public square. And they said, well, that's true. So to come from a partnership place, like even if you don't live in world peace right now, you can decide that it lives in your heart. And even if you don't live in the partnership culture of your dreams outwardly, you can be that yourself. Now, like Gandhi said, you know, you can be the change right now. So in that moment of contention, if that is inside of you and you speak in that way, and you're basically saying everyone's on the same side, we're just confused, that's an energy that will transcend. So I think that's the second point. And then the third point is to realize that everybody is ready. Like in the bureaucracy, people are so ready to help. Even if they feel that they're paid to say no, they're all ready to say yes, because they're desperately bored with so much of their own experience. So when they said, you know, when we got them to agree that there was a public square, and they said, why should we help you? We said, because we want you to have a more fulfilling experience of your own in your work. And they said, nobody cares about us. Like, we touched a nerve. So I think, you know, to come from a place of mutuality all the time, and even if people are like denigrating you, oh, like you softy, oh, you're just a bleeding heart, like, be who you are and stand in that and be proud of it.
We've done a lot, and I'm going to ask Sabrina to come up in a moment to talk about permaculture Akron. But we're building a culture of permaculture. And a lot of your designs, a lot of the things that have emerged in Portland require some level of knowledge in those kinds of designs. What's your recommendation for where folks might take advantage of learning opportunities to know how to do this stuff? Like, that chicken coop was awesome, right? But really, where can we learn?
Well, you can certainly take a permaculture class. We teach urban permaculture at a place called Planet Repair Institute, where we teach about permaculture, except it's in an urban setting. So I would say, if you want to learn through permaculture how to do this work, or through some kind of placemaking workshop that you could take, I would say try to find a place with an urban emphasis, because that's where everything has a whole different cast. Like in urban permaculture, everything has a social implication. Yeah, and an economic implication, sure, and a social, economic, human capital implication. And you start to realize, oh gosh, permaculture as it's been taught is from an Australian outback perspective, as if everyone has a whole lot of land around them. But when you're working on it in the city, you start to learn that everything is a community building opportunity. So I would say, look for those kinds of circumstances where people are teaching placemaking as part of their instruction. But frankly, you can get a lot of these pieces when you become an activist and you're part of some cause that's related to social or economic justice, or that's part of an ecological initiative. Invariably, these tools and strategies for being collaborative, for being facilitative, for being more attentive, and for engendering mutual benefit on behalf of a larger whole, that's really the stuff that you're after. And then once you get those modalities and behaviors and patterns, then you can learn your way through almost anything.
So you've been in Akron 36 hours or so, or give or take, and you've been around a little bit in our city. What recommendations do you have as we begin this effort that we really need to concentrate on initially? And do you have any thoughts about the Interbelt? Have folks talked to you about the Interbelt, showed you? Okay.
Well, we're guided, and I would recommend that you think about this too. We're guided by this kind of, it's almost like a diagram. This wonderful person named Kevin Lynch traveled around the world back in the 50s and early 60s, looking for the characteristics of the greatest, most robust human habitats in the world that were characterized by the longest residency and continuity and the most robust community expression and the lowest, sort of measurable indications of strife. And he distilled the constituents of place that encourage and facilitate interaction. And it's these, I think, 6 things that every neighborhood should feature. And this is the armature of place within which you would revegetate and make your urban agriculture initiatives and help community to thrive. But it's this armature that we read and then we respond to. And it's basically to say that when you pass from one environment to the next, there should be something that celebrates the transition like a portal. And as you're traveling pathways, it shouldn't just be that you're trying to get from A to B in this perfunctory reality, but that everything is a journey. So just say, for instance, you wanted to make every pathway like a journey. In Akron, you could, like I do sometimes with friends in other cities, we'll hang poems swinging in the breeze, thousands of them from trees. You know, or we'll go around and we'll sprinkle cookies on people's front porches and little plates that say, you must be awesome. I can sort of tell, you know, with a little note or something that, and you don't ever even tell anyone you did it. You're just enchanting everyone intentionally. So that's about restoring. So pathways, gateways, pathways, and then nodes of activity where people are working together, celebrating together like this. But every neighborhood should have a meeting house. Every neighborhood should have community workshops. So nodes of activity, those are the third thing. And then the fourth thing is the village heart. Every neighborhood should feature one great commons at least, where everyone knows that they all can go there. That's where the main action will be happening. The fifth thing is the thing that's most missing of all in the USA, and these are places of memory and story. Also, Kevin Lynch referred to them as monuments. But they're places that tell story. They're like in Mexico along the side of the road where someone has died, you'll see one. In the Himalayas where they just want you to remember always that the divine is present all the time, you'll see them along the side of pathways, or especially at crossroads, you'll see an altar, and it's trying to remind you that reality is actually sacred and not profane. So that's the fifth thing. And then the sixth thing is that somehow the whole community adds up to a greater whole, and it somehow takes on a distinct form in your perception. So if you could somehow engender, as you transform a neighborhood, into a fabric in which the whole becomes truly greater than the sum of its parts, then that would be sort of a guiding framework for anything that you would want to do. Yeah, what an amazing opportunity. We're retrofitting our city with something that's trying to be as good as what you can create here. But we don't have the advantage of the inner belt. We're trying to create a green loop that unifies the city as the biggest public space project we've done. But we have to retrofit the environment that exists. And what you have is this great open space. I would say for the green belt, I would propose and get out there to create temporary installations to just test ideas in space. You know, to work with anyone who will partner with you, to model what it's like to use that in a social way, to create ecological installations. Certainly you could do graphic installations all over it and then take gorgeous pictures of it from the sky. You know, just use it as a palette where you could do some amazing designs, and maybe install every design that anyone could suggest, because it's quite a lot of space. But I think you know, from an urban agriculture point of view, all of that could become arable land. You could also selectively leave a lot of it as some kind of pathway or some amount of hardscape that you can use while you remove a lot more of it. Some aspects of it have hard walls. Those could become living walls. They could also become a palette or a surface for installing some graphics or sculptural installations. I think it should be a cultural space that feeds people's souls and bodies.
So we have a new administration here in the city of Akron. I think we would all agree much more open and receptive to engaging with the community than our previous 27-year-old administration. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Knowing that we've got new leadership, what would your recommendation be to our community to engage the administration in a strategic and visionary conversation that would also include, you know, we got to loosen up some of the policies that we have so that we can be way more flexible and creative.
Well, now is the time. We're so used to being in a passive posture where we feel that once we elect someone that they should undertake their campaign promises that they should somehow find the funding and make things happen. But it just can't work that way. When you have a mayor who is, like with your previous administration, as I've heard, so many things had to go through him that things were basically limited. I mean, he was the common denominator. So whatever happened was whatever he decided would happen, or he was ready to say yes to. And hopefully, you do have a more enlightened administration now, but they still can't get all the things done that need to happen, and they won't have the ideas that will satisfy your needs. So the most underutilized aspect of whatever we can call democracy in this country is for us to be actively engaged, not just advocating or protesting. Like, I respect cultures of resistance for sure, but proactive cultures that have an idea and want to undertake it, and are prepared to take your ideas and put them into some form that you can use to propose your ideas through a presentation, or through just organizing it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. These homeless villages, as soon as homeless people were able to get it onto an 11 by 7 piece of paper, like, okay, they could be dying in the street, and the administration's like, oh, that's too bad. But as soon as they put it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, it's like, whoa, it's on paper now? That's impressive. And they're ready to say yes, and it's almost that simple. If you can formulate your ideas into something that you can leave with people that helps you to concisely articulate your vision, you're so much farther along the way. But I want to say, the main work is to start. It's to start engendering the culture of yes, and everything after that becomes easier, even if the scale of what you're doing is greater.
So, as a transition, one of the things that Gaines was able to do last year was to bring some ideas to the previous administration regarding their combined sewer overflow strategy to incorporate green design into that strategy. And I'd like to ask one of the folks who actually had a lot to do with sharing that information with the administration, Sabrina Schweier, to please come up, because she's also organizing Permaculture Akron.
But also provide for the needs of the earth, the planet, and all the creatures that we share the planet with. Bill McDonough, the architect and sustainability leader, talked about how do we love all of the children of all species for all times. And so permaculture has the philosophy of people care, earth care, and fair share. And it's a whole system of thinking about the design process. How many of you out there are passionate permaculturists already? Yes. I know we have a community, and they all came out when we had an advanced design course last year, and we had a famous permaculturist, Peter Bain, came and spoke to Gaines. And from that, we sort of took a little bit more interest in creating I guess sort of an outgrowth of Gaines, the Permaculture Akron group. So like Gaines, we'll be meeting probably every month on the last Wednesday of the month, but it's just starting. So if Wednesday's not a good night, we may shift it, but the consensus at our very first meeting last month was to have monthly gatherings where we learn sort of the permaculture philosophy, methodology, possibly do some projects, work with what's going on with the city repair. And I can tell you also that we, as a company, Salisbury Schweier is our landscape design firm, we are planning on doing a PDC in Akron in the fall at this point. So there's some exciting things happening, so please join us. Permaculture Akron is on Facebook as well as on Meetup, and you'll be getting information through the Gaines newsletter. Thank you.
Okay, you've been really patient. This has been a lot of sitting tonight. We didn't have any time actually for an open question and answer, but I think Mark and Jason will be around for a while. Please make sure that you hang out and engage with them. Next month, we will be focused on the local food movement, We heard a lot about the opportunities that we have to build a local food movement and economy. We'll be hearing about huge progress with the local food movement here in Akron. Beth Knorr with Countryside Conservancy and Katie Fry with Round River Consulting have been very involved with conducting a local food assessment in partnership with Akron Community Foundation that's resulted in significant funding to support a more significant movement. So if you're interested in that, which obviously is a big part of what we were talking about tonight, please plan to attend. We are back at Musica, I think, right? Are we back at Musica next month? Yes. Yes, okay. Thanks to the 880 Foundation for supporting our speakers tonight, and thanks again. Yep. And thanks again to our planning team and especially our millennial team for putting this together tonight. Good night.